Hello and welcome. Today we're going to break down episode 5 of Rings of Power season 2. And this video is just like the last video where we're going to go through each different story arc. We're going to start off with the Dwarves of Khazad-dûm, what the ring will do to King Durin III. Next up, we're going to see how the manipulation between Annatar and Celebrimbor plays out. And finally, we're going to take a look at the rise of Ar-Pharazôn, and we're going to see some stuff about Kemen. Kemen. So why don't we start this video, and we're going to start off with the Dwarves of Khazad-dûm. And we immediately see a shot of Durin with the 7 dwarven rings, and he starts off with taking one of the 7 rings for himself. And honestly, I really thought that we're going to see more of the creation of the dwarven rings than just what happened at the end of episode 3, where the gold has been melted down and the mithril has been added to the gold. After Durin wears the rings, he goes to this dig site where they are looking where they need to dig to find light to restore Khazad-dûm. Durin III hears the stones and follows the guidance of the ring, and the ring says to dig there. They didn't really trust him, but he took a pickaxe, dug there, and the light came out. And after that, he just went through the walls, said, you need to dig here, you need to dig here, you need to dig here, you need to dig here. And they did that. I'm not quite fond of the new power that the ring has, just like in the previous episode where it has some kind of healing power towards elves. It just had that power that you can now hear the mountain and you hear the whispers. I wasn't really fond of that, but yeah, it goes with the healing of the mountain that they said in episode 3. I didn't really like the new powers that they add to the rings, but that might just be me. Next up in Khazad-dûm, we see Disa and Durin. Disa wants to buy this orb, then they learn that Durin is asking taxes. I think they did this to showcase this greediness of the ring, but I just found it out that like the next day or the next 2 days, his greediness goes really high. It felt a bit too fast to me. Despite that, Disa loses the orb, it rolls down, further down. It looked a little bit of a clumsy scene to me, reminded me of what the stranger had with the map in the previous episode. And then she finds this cave, and there was some nameless thing hiding there. Something is swimming in the water. I immediately thought of the Watcher in the Motto that is at the west gate of Moria when the Fellowship enters through the doors of Durin. What I was really glad to see was King Durin talking to these emissaries of the other dwarven kingdoms. And I was really glad to see this because I feared that they haven't mentioned any other dwarves living anywhere in Middle-earth, that they were just going to go and distribute the 7 dwarven rings in Khazad-dûm and not distributing to the other realms, but they actually did, although that they come with a price. Durin, because his greediness is growing, he asked for a share of their mines for this ring. Then we see Durin really having lost all sense of control, like he's completely corrupted by this ring. He wanted Na'vi to dig deeper and deeper, but he says, who said that they can't dig deeper there? Well, you said, sir. You said that a decade ago. He was like, yeah, oh yeah, that's right. But we need to dig deeper there. We need more capacity. We need more gold, more jewels. I know they are there. We need them. And then he didn't find his ring, and he was like completely panicking. And it just reminded me of the scene in the Fellowship of the Ring where Bilbo loses his ring when it was actually in his pocket. I'm not quite loving the ring corrupting the dwarves. In the books, the rings don't really corrupt the dwarves in the sense that they were created to be. They made the dwarves more greedy. But just like Durin IV says in the latest scene to Celebrimbor, he wasn't greedy at all, but suddenly he is. And I feel that this change from not being greedy at all to super greedy to immensely greedy is just a bit too much. I know that they want to let the people show what the ring is doing to the dwarves, but I find it a little bit too fast and too heavy. This ring has to pass on from generation to generation. Eventually, this ring that Durin III has comes to Thorin's father, Thrain II. And I find it hard to believe that they would all take this ring if you can immediately see how it corrupts the dwarf. Yeah, I didn't really like how heavy it changed Durin. I think in my opinion it would be better that Durin III was already greedy, but because of this ring he became greedier. And I think this would be much better than going from not at all greedy to super greedy. So Durin the Fourth also walks in on this conversation and he says, Dad, you need to listen to me. Don't use this ring. It is corrupting you. Don't use it, but his dad wouldn't listen. So Durin the Fourth goes to a region, which we will cover a little bit later down the video when we talk about Annatar and Celebrimbor. But after he went to the region, he returns, yeah, Dad, I don't want you to use this ring. It is making you mad. It corrupts your mind. And his dad wouldn't listen at all, and he makes him crown prince again. So he returns to Disa, and Disa sees that he is crown prince. She says, and swear to me that you will never wear this ring. And Durin the Fourth swears to it. Which, as I said before, he will, because it has to be. It needs to pass on from father to son until you come a Thrain II. But I don't really know how they're going to play this all out. Next up in the story, we're going to talk about Annatar and Celebrimbor, and I honestly say this is my favorite part of the entire episode, just because I love the dynamic between Charlie Vickers and Charles Edwards. Really enjoy Charlie Vickers as Annatar, and I think he is the best part of the series so far. Before we go to the relationship about Annatar and Celebrimbor, we first have to take a look at what I have been waiting for this entire season, and actually the previous season as well, and that is the creation of the Doors of Durin. They have finally created them together with Narvi. I created Doors of Durin that will be the new entrance to the west gate of Moria. And Narvi says, which I really like, it only opens with a password and you need to be a friend to know the password. The password is actually Melon, which is Tangwar for friend. So I really enjoyed that joke that they have put in there. Honestly, I was a bit disappointed about the Doors of Durin, not about their creation. They look really cool. I feared for this moment that it was something that they're going to put in, like a little cameo in the season, than just a storyline that is going to play. I already said from my breakdown of the trailer that I feared that they weren't going to put enough time into their relationship between Celebrimbor and Narv. In the books, they are great friends. I was hoping to see more of a relationship build-up between Narvi and Celebrimbor, and I believe that they could have done that from season 1. And I think it would be better to change it instead of showing Harfoots and the Stranger. They have given them so much time to the series. I would really love to see that they would use this time that they go with the Harfoots with the Stranger, use it to create this friendship between Narvi and Celebrimbor, but they didn't. I can't go rambling on about this, but I was really looking forward to seeing them working together. Actually, Narvi chiseling the stone, making it perfect so it would blend in so good with the mountain. And then Celebrimbor inlaying the stone with the Thildin. Oh, what I would give to see that. Then Annatar says, yeah, come on, we can't work on this all too much. We need to be creating the rings for men. And Celebrimbor says, why should we make rings for men? We have them from the elves, we have them for the dwarves. The men are too easily corrupted. We can't give it to them. And then Annatar says, give it to the best men there are. We're going to look from Númenor until Rune and see where the best men are to give these rings to. And he mentions that great men have lived in the First Age as well. And he's talking about Eärendil, Tuor, and Beren, son of Barahir. And I really enjoyed this moment that they mention these people from the First Age. Celebrimbor cannot change his mind and is a little bit, no, I'm not going to do this. So Annatar says, fine, I will be making them myself. And honestly, I did enjoy the conversation between Celebrimbor and Annatar. I really love the dynamic and how Annatar is really corrupting Celebrimbor. I can understand Celebrimbor. Why should we make rings for men? They are mortal. They are easily corrupted. Why should we do this? And this brings us back to creating the rings out of order. Just as I have mentioned in previous episodes, the elves created the rings for themselves. They created 16 rings for themselves. Sauron took them, spoiler alert, and divided them among the other races. It was his plan B. It wasn't his first plan to create these rings for men, elves and dwarves. He wanted just to control the elves, not the other races, because he found the elves more powerful. I just think that because of they created them out of order and they changed the direction, first creating the 3, then the 7, then the 9, it makes it hard to fix all the loose ends. You can clearly see this during this season of Rings of Power, which if they hadn't done that, it would be so much better, but I think that every Tolkien fan can agree with me on that. So Annatar and the Elven Smiths of Eregion without Celebrimbor start with the creation of the Rings of Power for men. And suddenly they are all crying and some tools are just flying around. This seemed once again a little bit silly. It seemed like some sort of cheap magic trick, but it was actually Mirdania who was wearing one of the 9 rings for men and she turned invisible. She entered the unseen world where she saw a place just like the Forge, but the others weren't there, and she saw a body of flame. With lidless eyes, she saw Sauron in his unseen form, because he is a Maya and he lives both in the seen and unseen world. But there are a couple of problems with that. First of all, because in the books the rings were never created for the men, they were never created with the purpose that they can make them invisible. If an elf would wear one of these rings, like Galadriel for example, she would never turn invisible. They were created the same way as the rest. The only thing is that they were corrupted by Sauron. Elf wouldn't really turn invisible. And another thing is that the elves that have lived in Valinor during the years of the trees live both in the seen and unseen world. Just like Galadriel and even Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor lived during the years of the trees, so he would have perfectly seen Mirdania wearing this ring, being in the unseen world. I found this a little bit disturbing, in my honest opinion. It didn't really fit well with the story and with the lore that we know from the books. After this moment, Durin IV, like I mentioned before, went to Eregion and talked to Celebrimbor, and he said that the ring was actually corrupting Durin III. And he said, "Oh, this cannot be, we created them the same way as the tree." So then Durin IV said, yeah, maybe it has something to do with that Annatar guy that I don't trust. So Celebrimbor goes and confronts Annatar and he says, "Did you do something different?" "No, I did not. We did the same thing, but it might be because of us that something has changed. Because we have deceived Gil-galad with that letter that we have sent him, that we closed down the forge. It was deceit, and because of this deceit, the rings were created differently." And I really enjoyed it. It was Annatar more corrupting Celebrimbor, giving him a reason, and I really enjoyed this, how Annatar is playing on Celebrimbor. Because of this moment, they are going to create these rings of power for the men to redeem the 7. During his thought process about the rings, Annatar goes talking to Mirdania. He says that she has the hair like Galadriel, that the light shines upon it, and that is true. Galadriel's hair has the blended light of the 2 trees inside her. I have a video here that I will link here where I talk about Galadriel's hair, and that is the best gift that Gimli could ever had. So check this video out if you haven't seen it yet. It made me think, and I know that it made a lot of other people think, that this might be actually Celebrian, the daughter of Galadriel and Celeborn, who marries Elrond later down the story. Because we haven't seen really her daughter, we haven't seen Celeborn, we have mention of him, nothing more. I do believe that this might be Celebrian. Maybe she has some memory loss or something, because she has a completely different name and don't really know what Annatar is talking about. I do believe we will see more of this in a future episode. But during this scene, Annatar is really manipulating her, which I quite enjoyed. Just shows more who Annatar really is and what he's really doing to the elves of Eregion. So after Celebrimbor wanted to redeem himself by creating the 9 rings, he says, "Come on elves, we have to work harder, we have to do our completely best, nothing less than our ultimate best, or otherwise you won't be a smith of Eregion." So he was really hard on them, and then after he left, Annatar is like, "Yeah guys, it's okay, don't worry, he knows that you are good, he knows you're capable, he's just under a lot of stress." But let's go to the final storyline that we are going to cover today, and that is the storyline of Ar-Pharazôn and his kingdom of Númenor. Ar-Pharazôn and Kemen, talking about the future of Númenor, for Ar-Pharazôn says that he mad that the elves have immortal life and that they have not, that they are doomed to die. And I found this really cool that he has been now the king of Númenor. He craves more power. And I really enjoyed this moment. It was a strong start for Númenor this episode, since it so weakly ended in episode 3. During this scene, Ar-Pharazôn also tells Kemen, Kemen. So she tells that his mother had a vision about him, which didn't end good. But Ar-Pharazôn didn't want to tell him more because he hasn't earned it yet to know the rest of the story, which was okay. You will be granted Father of the Year, but I understand if you have a son like Kemen. Kemen. I can understand. Elendil wants to rouse the people, rouse the faithful against Ar-Pharazôn, and that Miriel is actually the rightful queen of Númenor. But Miriel asks him, what did you actually see in the Palantir? Because if you remember from episode 3, Elendil actually touched the Palantir, but he saw something completely different than what Miriel saw. Miriel always saw the downfall of Númenor with the flood coming over the land and sinking the entire island. But Elendil doesn't see that, so she thinks because Ar-Pharazôn is now king, it will change the future of Númenor and Númenor will be saved. So she just says to Elendil, stay put, stay quiet, believe me, this is the best thing we need to do. So after that, Elendil walks in the street and he sees all these soldiers giving back their uniforms and just being stripped of rank. And he's like talking to Valandil, what's happening? Yeah, everyone who is faithful to Miriel has to be stripped of rank and has to give back their uniform. And he says, on whose authority is this? And then his daughter arrives, Eärien. I don't like her. I do think that she will, together with Kemen, Kemen, be one of the Lords of Men that will receive one of the Rings of Power and become one of the Nazguls. But that is just my theory. Let me know what you think, what they might turn out. So after his conversation with his daughter, he just gives his sword and just goes. And then Valandil says, Captain leaving deck, which I really enjoyed how this man loved Elendil. A great leader and king he is that the men would follow. I really enjoy his casting, perfect casting for Elendil. I can't say more about it. Really good casting, and I really enjoyed this scene. Just shows how great of a leader he's going to be. After that moment, Eärien goes to Valandil. He was like her best friend. Hey, I can talk to the king and I will put in a good word for you so you can be a high rank. And he says, no, I know what side you're on. I don't want it. And he rejects it. And Kemen, Kemen is jealous. He thinks like, what? What is happening between those two? She's my girlfriend. Completely off point, but he is jealous. Next we go to this memorial by the faithful, and I believe this has something to do with all the people who died on the battlefield in Middle-earth, and they just want to remember them and honor them. But at that moment, Kemen comes in. Kemen. So he enters and he says, this place has to go. It has to make way for a brand new aqueduct. They aren't quite happy about this. Yeah, this is our place. Leave it alone, man. The moment they leave this sacred place, the priest wants to take this statue with him. Elendil said to Kemen, Kemen, give him the statue, man. Give him the statue. That's all I ask. Give it. And Kemen, Kemen just drops it on the ground and it breaks, which is such a douchebag move, if I might be honest. At that moment, Elendil hits him right in the face. He did deserve it. So the guards immediately grab Elendil, and at that moment, Kemen wants to slap Elendil in the face, but Valandil stops him, and there's a little bit of a fight going on between Valandil and Kemen. Kemen. At one sudden moment, Valandil breaks his arm, which, masterclass, he did deserve it, by the way. Really enjoyed it. But after Valandil let him go, he stabs Valandil in the back, and Valandil dies, which is such a Kemen move to do. I wasn't surprised of Valandil dying somewhere during this season or the next, because we know that from the books that the son of Isildur is actually called Valandil, and I have always thought that this is because his friend has died during some kind of battle, and that he just named his son after him in great honor of his friend. Honestly, I wasn't really shocked when he died, but it was a sad moment. So this brings us to the end of the episode. I personally think it is a huge improvement from the previous episode, and it's mostly because the strongest storyline is at play here. And that is the story of Annatar and Celebrimbor. In the previous episode, we have a lot of the stranger and the Harfoots and the stores and They are such weak points in the story. I don't really get why they have so much screen time. I would rather have to see more of Celebrimbor and Annatar, give them more time for Annatar to corrupt Celebrimbor, or give Narvi and Celebrimbor more time than see more of the stranger. So we're going to see what happens in episode 6. I will be here once again for you with a brand new breakdown for episode 6. And if you haven't seen my breakdown of the amazing episode 4, which is totally not, you can watch it here. I will give my comment here, so enjoy the next one. Bye bye.